All right, here we go. Good afternoon to you. It's now 3:06 News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up this hour, he's a candidate for United States Senate in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Hung Cao will join us at 3:30 ahead of a mega rally in Salem, Virginia, alongside President Trump tomorrow. President Trump taking Virginia seriously. So are we. We'll talk to Hung Cao about that. Mike Chapman, the Loudoun County Sheriff, joins us at 4:30 today. We talk about murders in Loudoun by MS-13 gang members. I guess we have some updates on that story. Ryan Gerdusky is here at 5 o'clock. We will dig into the available polling nationwide, especially in those swing states. And at 5:30, here with an update on all of the economic numbers, bad news ahead of the election, E.J. Antoni will join us. And you can do it, too, at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. It really is the theme of the end of this campaign. Kamala Harris does not have a positive vision to run on, so she's running on the destruction of her political opponent by any means necessary, and that means conjuring up hoax after hoax after hoax. This week has been unbelievable. I've lost track of the number of hoaxes the left has advanced this week, but there's a bunch. One of them, remember, is that Donald Trump held a rally at Madison Square Garden because it was a Nazi rally. That's what Tim Walz was saying at the beginning of this week. That was the Nazi hoax. We've seen a lot of other hoaxes, too, this week. We've got the apostrophe hoax. That's where Joe Biden and the White House claimed that Biden wasn't calling Trump supporters garbage because there was a hidden apostrophe somewhere in the word supporters that changed the meaning entirely. There was the like it or not hoax. That's where the left claims that Donald Trump was going to impose some sort of awful future on women, whether they, quote, like it or not. Of course, President Trump was being pretty explicit about the fact that he said he's going to make the country safe for women, which nobody would oppose, you would think. And then today we get the firing squad hoax. The left is claiming today that Donald Trump wants to deploy a firing squad against Liz Cheney. Well, that's wild. Why would he say that? Well, it turns out he wouldn't, and he didn't. So does this sound to you, as I go through all these hoaxes, does this sound to you like a campaign that feels like they're in the driver's seat right now? This is a campaign that feels like it's destined for victory. If they're this wild, crazy, and deceitful in the final moments of this campaign, it's insanity. It's total insanity. Let's go through. Let's start with today's hoax. How shall we? And we can go back in time if you'd like. But for now, let's start with today's hoax. President Trump was in Arizona last night alongside Tucker Carlson in front of a sold-out crowd on a huge stage. That's, of course, one of the pivotal states in this contest, Arizona. And while he was on stage, the two of them were talking about what's important to the American people, obviously. And among the priorities is getting us out of needless wars and not getting us into needless wars at the expense of American blood and treasure. And if you're a sane American, you support that position. And President Trump referred to Liz Cheney as one of the establishment Washington figures who sends too many of our sons and daughters off to die in pointless conflicts. So that's what he said, and here's what it sounded like. Take a listen.
And I don't blame him for sticking with his daughter, but his daughter's a very dumb individual, very dumb. She's a radical war hawk. Let's put her with a rifle standing there with 9 barrels shooting at her, okay? Let's see how she feels about it. You know, when the guns are trained on her face. You know, they're all war hawks when they're sitting in Washington in a nice building saying, oh, gee, let's send 10,000 troops right into the mouth of the enemy.
So does that sound like Trump says we should send her in front of a firing squad? In what firing squad did they give the person who's about to be executed a gun? He says outright in that clip, hand her a gun and send her out there against 9 people who are aiming at her, trying to shoot her. We send our troops into these dangerous situations all the time. And so he's saying that this is yet another person who, from the comfort of Washington, D.C., very carelessly disposes of the lives of Americans. And it's not to the benefit of our country. That is a very real and legitimate critique of what's happening in Washington right now. And yet today, we get the Kamala campaign and the media now working in tandem yet again to claim that President Trump was calling for Liz Cheney's execution by firing squad.
I don't think you even need to call it fire department. He's saying quite explicitly and unambiguously that Liz Cheney should be shot, should be executed by firing squad.
4 days out from Election Day, and former President Donald Trump is escalating his violent rhetoric, suggesting one of his most prominent critics, the former Congresswoman Liz Cheney, should be fired upon.
Your reaction to what Donald Trump said about Liz Cheney?
Yeah, well, look, I mean, it was completely inappropriate, dangerous, and unbecoming of a leader. Mr. Trump was literally going after someone who doesn't agree with him. So it shouldn't be a surprise when people come on TV and feel the need to agree with him.
That's 9 barrels. Well, when he says 9 barrels shooting at her, that obviously evokes images of a firing squad. It evokes images of an execution.
Let's execute a political opponent who happens to be a woman because I don't like her. And, like, does that pull more low propensity voters in his coalition to the polls? I honestly don't think so.
Yeah, when you misconstrue everything about what he said, distort it beyond recognition, and then attack the version that you created. So the lies are out of control. And, of course, Donald Trump's position is not the, quote, violent one. Donald Trump's position is the peaceful one. Donald Trump's position is, how do we avoid American bloodshed? Did you notice that? And here you have all these media people working on behalf of Kamala's campaign, all rushing to their microphones saying, oh, Donald Trump is calling for violence. He's calling for the opposite of that. He's calling for American lives to be saved. There's more. Here's Joe Scarborough, Eugene Robinson this morning on MSNBC.
Reaction to Donald Trump calling for Liz Cheney being shot in the face by 9 guns, 9 rifles in the closing weekend of the campaign.
Just disgraceful.
Not only what
just disgraceful lies from these people.
Says about where the Republican Party is in 2024, but also
Trump was actually shot in the face. Trump was actually shot in the face. And Joe Scarborough was taken off the air because MSNBC didn't trust him to handle that news.
what it must look like to our allies in London, in Paris, in Madrid, in Warsaw, across the world.
This is him trying to prove he knows other countries.
Yeah. Well, it looks completely insane to our allies across the world, and this is unprecedented, and this is, I'm so glad that we're focusing on this and spending some time on it, because this is not normal. This is not acceptable. This is so dangerous.
It's so crazy is what it is. The vicious lies coming out of the left here. Just insanity. Liz Cheney responded to this and, of course, played the victim. Mika Brzezinski reading the tweet.
Talking about Donald Trump's attack on Liz Cheney, where he suggested she should have guns trained at her face. The former Congresswoman responded on social media, writing, quote, "This is how dictators destroy free nations.
Oh, my God.
They threaten those who speak against them with death. We cannot entrust our country and our freedom to a petty, vindictive, cruel, unstable man who wants to be a tyrant. Hashtag women will not be silenced."
Oh, my goodness. Hashtag women will not be silenced. Of course. Of course. And so that's all over the place. There's a lady called Casey Hunt who said that Trump is making the rhetoric very violent. He's escalating.
4 days out from Election Day, and former President Donald Trump is escalating his violent rhetoric, suggesting one of his most prominent critics, the former Congresswoman Liz Cheney, should be fired upon.
She's a radical war hawk. Let's put her with a rifle standing there with 9 barrels shooting at her, okay? Let's see how she feels about it. You know, when the guns are trained on her face. You know, they're all war hawks when they're sitting in Washington in a nice building saying, oh, gee, let's send 10,000 troops right into the mouth of the enemy.
Right. Right.
Let's see how she feels when the guns are trained on her face.
When she knows the consequences of her decisions with other people's lives.
Of course, violent rhetoric, it's not new for Trump. But this stark imagery represents an escalation.
Oh, shut up. These people are such awful human beings. I've noticed a lot of people pointing out today, keep track of all these idiots. I know by now you probably already know the usual suspects who are going to say this stuff. But the people who come out and seriously say that Trump was calling for her to face a firing squad, morons. And now, no, excuse me. No, sorry, that was too generous. Vile liars is what they are. Just vile partisan liars is what they are. Let me go now to Radu calling in from Potomac on line 2. Radu, good afternoon, sir. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hey, Vince, I agree with you that the context is wrong. But can you please explain to me why with 4 days to go till the election, does Donald Trump need to say that when he knows it opens up a Pandora's box? Or is he not happy unless something negative about him is posted in the paper? Does he have to do this with 4 days to go before the election when he knows?
But Radu, it doesn't matter what he says.
The media.
Radu, it doesn't matter what he says. They make it up anyway. And so if he's going to say anything, wait 1 second. If he's going to say anything, he should tell the truth. And he told the truth about this. Radu, there's a meaningful component of the electorate who cares a lot about that issue, which is like we shouldn't be in needless foreign wars. And he said in really obvious terms that the people who send our troops off to die don't even think about the consequences of their decisions. And I think everything he said was perfectly defensible.
I understand that, Vince. I understand if we talk about it, that's the way it is. But with 4 days to go, when you know that they're going to look for every word, right now, as far as I'm concerned, the only thing he should say is, I am going to fix the economy. I'm going to fix the border. I'm going to fix the crime. We're going to do this. And that is it. Let's just get over a goal line. Let's get over it. It's only 4 days to go. I think that by him constantly putting his foot in his mouth.
Yeah, but I don't think he put his foot in his mouth. And here's one thing, Radu, to contemplate. And maybe you're right in the end. Maybe I'm wrong about this, but I'm telling you, one of the things to recognize and remember here is that Donald Trump has the most unique political instincts that any of us have ever seen. And sometimes it's not crystal clear to you at the moment when this is all going down and you're seeing all of these lies being expressed about him and you're worried about the impact of those lies. I get that impulse. But Trump has very unusually good political instincts that have defied every ounce of gravity that so many have thrown at him through the years. So we'll see how it turns out. But Look, I get that you're concerned because you want him to win, and I do too.
That's the only thing I want. I want to win on Tuesday because if she becomes president for somebody who came from communism, I am so going to be so angry and upset that I can't have words to describe how upset it is going to be to me and my family and to every single Eastern European who came to this country legally and who are all 99% of them Republicans. I can't tell you how I have nightmares about this woman becoming president.
All right, Radu. Thank you very much. Radu, always appreciate your calls and your experience. All right. Marco Rubio just tweeting, in the closing days of this campaign, virtually every major media outlet in America is openly participating in the largest disinformation effort in history in the hopes of defeating Trump. He's not wrong. We're being served hoax after hoax after hoax, all in an effort to arrest Trump's return to the White House. Kamala Harris joining in concert with her media allies today, standing outside of Air Force 2.
And then, even worse, he has increased his violent rhetoric, Donald Trump has, about political opponents, and in great detail, suggested rifles should be trained on former Representative Liz Cheney.
Such a lie. Everything about this, just a complete lie. And there she is, advancing it. Doing it alongside most of the major news outlets in our country. Let's bring in Chris now in Thurmont. Line 1. Chris, good afternoon, sir. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
How you doing, Vince?
Good.
I have to say, all the words from the mainstream media and the punditry shows the desperation, and it's just palpable because they don't know what to do because they're watching something slip away from them. Now, I'm not going to predict anything, but it is so obvious every day it's a hoax of some sorts. But then we get called garbage and deplorables and things of that nature, and we're supposed to just sit there and take it.
I don't think people are just taking it. You know what I mean, Chris? I think right now, I think that the left is underestimating the extent to which they're activating people all across the country who are sick of this garbage. And specifically, I didn't mean to use garbage again, but that is the word to use. Because
I agree, but the one thing I think is now this is like their last desperation, and the mainstream media and the punditry of that is burning the last little bit of credibility that they thought they had left, and it's going to come to bite them in the backside in the end.
Yeah, and rightfully so. Rightfully so. They made that bed. They should lie in it. I hope you're right, Chris. And we're seeing there's another expression of that. Chris, thank you. There's another expression of that today at the Washington Post. One of their columnists just up and quit the entire paper today because his colleagues just keep lying about Donald Trump and what he's actually saying and doing out there. It was actually a fight about election integrity. And this guy was like, you know what? I'm done. Literally quit in the middle of a broadcast, walked out to the newsroom, said, I'm not just done the broadcast, I'm done the whole newspaper. He quit the newspaper and he left because of the lies they're telling to get Kamala Harris elected. And they're not just telling lies over at the Washington Post. They're paying to advance those talking points, which is the subject of a new FEC complaint today as the Washington Post is trying to put its finger on the scale to get Kamala Harris into the Oval Office. I think we've got a lot to cover. Hung Cao is going to join us next. He'll talk to us about what's happening in Virginia. He'll be rallying alongside President Trump tomorrow. We've got a lot to discuss. Stay with us. Hey, good afternoon to you. It is now 3:35, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we are making sense of the news. Coming up on the program, Sheriff Mike Chapman from Loudoun County joins us with the latest on the efforts to get crime under control there. Ryan Gerdusky is here at 5 o'clock with a deeper look at the poll numbers and what to expect come Election Day. And E.J. Antoni from the Heritage Foundation, our in-house economist, will talk to us about new economic data, things not looking good in the United States of America. This just 4 days now away from the election. We'll talk to him at 5:30. You can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Most of the attention right now, as you would expect, is on what the analysts all think are the 7 swing states. But here in our area, of course, because it's our audience and because it's fascinating and the Trump campaign is going there, we like to focus on Virginia, too. What's going on in the Commonwealth of Virginia? Well, who better to ask than my next guest, who is running for the United States Senate seat in Virginia. Hung Cao is here. He's a Republican Senate candidate, of course, and he's, in Virginia, as I said. Hey, Hung, good to have you back with us, sir.
Vince, thank you so much for having me on right now. I'm in the car with Rich Anderson, the RPB chairman, and we're barnstorming across Virginia with the governor, with President Trump tomorrow. It's going to be great.
Yeah, tell me what you're seeing on the road, and how are you feeling in these waning days of the campaign?
Vince, you were out there with me at early voting. You saw the excitement from the crowd. Everywhere I go, whether it's when we stop in for gas or something like that, or just a quick bite, people are like, oh, I know you, I voted for you. But what we're feeling on the ground is this. In Annandale, for example, very high propensity of Korean voters, and they're like, hey, we voted for you. And, the Muslim Americans, the Pakistanis, my neighbor came up and said, my dad is so excited about you. He said, hey, he took a picture of you and sent it around to all his friends saying, this guy went to Pakistan during the earthquake and helped our people and recovered victims. And, they just want to vote for peace. They just want peace around the world. And, for us around Virginia, I mean, people are excited. They want change, and change is not going to come from a 30-year career politician who's saying, please keep me in until the year 2030, and I promise this time I'll fix everything I screwed up.
The media are attacking President Trump today for saying something true out loud, which they do a lot. What he said was that the politicians in Washington who send our young men and women off to die don't actually think through the consequences at all, and they would think very differently if they themselves were going over to those war zones. You're a military veteran, Hung Cao. Do you share that sentiment?
I sure do. Look, I went to 20 years of endless wars. And, you know, for what purpose? We took, you know, Afghanistan away from the Taliban. We wasted $1 trillion. We sacrificed thousands of American lives only to give it back to the Taliban under Joe Biden. And I have a son right now at the United States Naval Academy who's going to graduate in a couple years. I don't want him fighting in these endless wars. The last people that want war are warriors who've seen blood and death, and we're not going to stand for it.
Yeah, rightfully so. Rightfully so. All right, so tomorrow you'll be in Salem, Virginia, alongside President Trump. He's campaigning in the Commonwealth. I take this as a pretty interesting and big signal because just to let people know, and we had a caller yesterday who wanted to raise this point. I'm sorry I couldn't get to him, but so this is where the idea came from. But President Trump was supposed to be in Pennsylvania tomorrow. In fact, he was going to go to the Penn State-Ohio State game. And they decided to change their plans. And instead, tomorrow, he's going to do a stop in North Carolina, into Virginia, back to North Carolina. What does it tell everyone that President Trump is coming to the Commonwealth of Virginia for the final weekend of the election, Hung Cao?
Because Virginia is in play, Vince. I've told you this forever, that, you know, Virginia breaks late, and he sees the same numbers I see, and he can win. He's literally like 1 or 2 points behind Kamala Harris, which is within the margin of error. But again, there's a lot of people like you and me that when they call up for polls, we're just going to hang up on them because I don't have time for that stuff. So he's already hired 20 more canvassers in Southwest Virginia. We bring up Southwest Virginia. I'm already winning in Hampton Roads. And get this, I'm actually winning in the Richmond metro area. Now, only 1 point, but I'm winning regardless. And that's scaring the heck out of Tim Kaine.
Yeah, that's a big deal. All right, so you said 1 or 2 points. Is that, as you assess it, is that from internal polling? Where are you drawing your numbers from?
From internal polling. And also, I think Real Clear Politics has that too, but it's internal polling. Because, you know, you have to – look, polls are what you pay for it, and it's out there for free, then it's worthless. We paid for good polls to get the actual pulse of how Virginia is, and, you know, it's 1 or 2 points. And, you know, there's – some of the polls have me so far behind President Trump, but I'm telling you right now, Vince, I'll buy you a tomahawk from Ruth's Chris Steakhouse if you can find somebody that's going to vote for Donald Trump and in the same ballot vote for Tim Kaine.
If I find them, we'll settle on Bourbon Boulevard. I think that'll be the right place to do it. Hey, let me point at some numbers that I think are interesting here. Among Republican voters across the state, the current data shows that the early vote, there's about 800,000 so far who have voted, Republican voters in the state. But there's a pool of about 2 million Republicans all across the state total who are registered to vote. In other words, you have well over 1 million Republican votes at least out there, Hung Cao, who can still show up over the next few days, including on Election Day. How many Republicans do you expect to be Election Day voters?
Well, I don't know about Republican total, so we expect 4.46 million voters in Virginia, and so far, almost 2 million people have already voted.
Yeah,
that's over 40% of the electorate. And get this: don't listen to the polls. Look at the actual numbers. There's 220,000 less Democrat voters as of today than there were 4 years ago, and there's 111,000 more Republican voters than there were today than there were 4 years ago. That's an 8% shift. The Democrats see this. Why do you think Tim Kaine has put more money into advertising? Why do you think that Kamala Harris is pulling money out of places like North Carolina to put into Virginia? Because they see that they're losing their so-called stronghold. Virginia is in play, and I'm telling you right now, get out there and vote. Get everybody around you to go vote, because this is so important for our country and our future right now.
It's totally critical. It's totally critical. And to add a finer point to what you just said, out of the Republican voters who are in Virginia, the ones who are registered, it looks like about 40% of all Republicans have actually cast a ballot so far, whereas just 30% of Democrats. In other words, Republicans are the party with all the enthusiasm right now in the Commonwealth.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, what are they running on? They're running on a failed economy, open borders, where we have 13,000 convicted murders and 16,000 convicted rapists that came to this country. They're killing people like Melody Waldecker, a grandmother in Sterling, Virginia, Lauren Nicole Leonard, a student down in Chesapeake, Virginia, the 12-year-old girl that was abducted on the way to school, and the 2 people that were killed up in Sterling again by illegal aliens. Like, this is enough. Enough is enough.
Yeah, enough is definitely enough. Tell me, how are you going to spend these next few days? Obviously, you're with President Trump tomorrow, and I imagine that comes with some FaceTime with him. I'm certain he'll talk about you on stage there. You'll also be addressing the crowd, I assume, right?
Yes, I will. I will be addressing the crowd. But look, you got to follow me on Twitter, because I'm telling you right now that I don't know where I'm going to be from one moment to the next. We're like a pinball machine running across Virginia. I'm down in Hampton Roads right now, going up to Urbana, back down to Emporia. Then tomorrow we're flying out to Salem, and then back to Harrisonburg and out to Tangier Island. I mean, we're all over the place. The better question is, where is Hung Cao not going to be?
Yeah. What do you think Tim Kaine's going to do in these final days?
I don't know. I mean, he might be crying in his big pillow or talking to his therapist, because, I mean, I put a hurting on him during the debate a month ago.
Talking to his therapist. All right. Well, Hung Cao, I'm always so grateful for your time and really appreciate you joining us. I know you have a very busy time on the campaign trail. Please say hello to Rich Anderson. I know you're in the car with those guys right now. Thank you again, sir, and best of luck to you.
Yes, sir. And thank you for what you do, Vince.
Thanks so much. That's Hung Cao, of course, a great veteran who's running for Senate in Virginia. And the numbers, again, the conventional wisdom is Virginia is going to Democrats, but just looking at some of the basic numbers here, it is interesting to see that there is a tremendous amount of Republican enthusiasm in the Commonwealth. That's so great to see. And there's much less Democrat enthusiasm. That's true. Worth pointing out, though, there are more registered Democrats owing to Northern Virginia, especially in Virginia, than there are Republicans, which is why Republicans really just need to show up. But once again, this is a basic point. But if every Republican showed up, it's an easy Republican victory in Virginia. But not everybody does. Not everybody shows up to vote. So these final days we have are so critical. And if you know somebody who's being a little lackadaisical about whether or not they're actually going to get out, get them out. Get them out. This is a turnout election for President Trump. If the turnout is high, Donald Trump wins the election. It's that simple. If turnout is high, Republicans win. That's the way it goes. And it used to be the Democrats assumed the opposite. That's not the case these days at all. Let me take Danny in Washington, D.C., now calling in on line 1. Danny, good afternoon, sir. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hey, Vince, how you doing? Listen, I was just down in that area of Virginia that Donald Trump's going to tomorrow, and I literally saw 4 Harris Walls signs between Roanoke, Lynchburg, Charlottesville, and so on and so forth. Everything else was Trump Vance, except for one guy driving probably a late 50s, early 60s sidestep pickup truck that had a Biden-Harris flag. I think he just came down off the mountain to get supplies and didn't realize that Biden wasn't in the race anymore. But, I mean, it is totally Trump Vance down the 81 corridor. And I stopped seeing the Harris Walls signs once I left Fairfax and that one little portion of Prince William before you hit Fauquier County. Mm-hmm. And then it was Trump Vance all the way south. And it was amazing. But, Donald Trump won Virginia in 2016 if it weren't for Fairfax County alone.
That is the way, isn't it?
Had he won Fairfax County, he would have won the entire southern tier of this country.
Well, also,
Virginia,
if you just do
North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, Tennessee.
Yeah.
Florida.
If you do slightly better in Fairfax County, you can achieve that outcome. And that really is key. And a lot of Republican statewide candidates have learned that through the years, that it is essential. If you can get good turnout in Fairfax County, it's a good indicator for how the rest of the race is going to go. Yeah, we've got a big one in front of us. But you're right. That's why President Trump is speaking in Salem, Virginia on tomorrow. And the hope is what they want to do is activate all of these, what they call low propensity voters, people who are Trump supporters who are kind of not sure if they're actually going to go out to vote. They just want to make sure that every single one of them get out.
Well, you know, between 2016 and now, if you're still sitting on the fence about how things were between 2016 and 2020, and then from 2021 until today, and you're still sitting on the fence, then you got more money than God, and prices and everything, and the current situation in this country doesn't faze you a bit. And I know that part of Virginia down there, it phases them quite a bit. So it's amazing.
It is amazing. Thank you, Danny. That's a good report from what's going on in the Commonwealth. Thank you very much. That's Danny. You too. And in fact, this is from a different state, but worth thinking about. I saw a piece of data this morning that jumped out at me about Georgia. Some interesting data out of Georgia. Dave Wasserman is a guy from the Cook Political Report. He's the guy who goes on X on election night and says, "I've seen enough," and then he says he's convinced that a state will go a certain way. He says it's notable. He said this morning, or make that late last night. It's notable that places like Towns County, Georgia, which was Trump plus 61 back in 2020, like a huge Trump county, is at 92% of its final 2020 turnout already. That's a Trump county. It's not even election day yet. They're at 92% of the turnout that showed up in 2020 already. He said, meanwhile, Clayton County, Georgia, which is a Biden plus 71 district, again, overwhelmingly left-wing, is at just 69% of its 2020 turnout. So what Dave Wasserman, the guy who's living is staring at these numbers, is thinking is, whoa, there's some big Republican efforts right now to get that early vote in, so much so that places like Towns County, Georgia, are already almost at 100% of their 2020 turnout. And that's a Trump district. And the Democrat districts are not doing that kind of action right now. And Democrat voters, at least the way the Democrats treat their voters, that they're notoriously hard to get out late in the campaign. They want to get them out as early as possible is their position, their posture. And so it's really incumbent upon Republicans here to take advantage of these last early days, wherever they exist, including in Virginia, and then finally on Election Day having just a massive, massive turnout to see if you can shock the nation this coming week. I'm not promising that. I won't even pretend to promise that'll be the outcome. But boy, it'd be exciting if it was. Let's go to the phones. I've got Dave calling in from Fairfax now, line 5. Dave, good afternoon, sir. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hey, Vince. How you doing?
Good, sir.
Yeah, I just voted. I got at my early voting precinct like at 3:30. Was done in half an hour. And when I was waiting in line, there was, I don't know, maybe 20 people waiting in line to vote. And then by the time I got out voting, the line had doubled in size.
Wow. And what did you notice anything? Did you see sample ballots? Any good reads on who people are supporting and what brings them out?
Well, no, I already knew all the ballot questions. I knew the constitutional amendment question for Virginia, the bond questions, president, U.S. senator, U.S. congressman. The only thing I got a read on is saw some ladies walk out and they had Planned Parenthood T-shirts on, so I'm sure they probably voted Democrat liberal.
That's safe to assume. Okay, but it was busy. This is what I keep hearing, by the way, is that all of the polling places have continued to have a very steady flow of traffic. In fact, to the point that I've gotten a couple people who kept going, and then they said, well, it was too long, and finally just stood in line and voted because they never could find the perfect time to do it.
Yeah, that's interesting because one of the poll workers, when I was waiting in line, this guy came out and talked to her, and, I had to wait in line maybe 15 minutes at the most, 20 possibly, and he was talking to her about when a good time is to come, and she was talking about how he got voting tomorrow, which only in early voting, last couple Saturdays they have it from 9 to 5, and then Monday, and then Tuesday's election day, and they have to vote at your normal location. So he's asking her, well, if come tomorrow, what time is better to come, the last couple hours or first couple hours in the morning, and she said, well, I heard her tell him that this election, early voting, it's never followed any of the rules, like in the past, because they have so many more people coming all throughout the day, early in the morning, late afternoon, that there is no good time to come and expect there's not going to be a line.
Yeah, well, the early voting, just to be crystal clear with everybody, does end tomorrow in Virginia. Tomorrow is the last day of early voting. So your window is right now. I will forgive you if you tune out of the broadcast for just a moment to cast a ballot. Or tomorrow, Saturday, and then it's election day. And who knows what kind of pipes will burst or what kind of power outages will ensue or whether or not you'll have a flat tire or what the hell is going to happen. Get those votes in, all right? Coming up, you think that that firing squad hoax can't get crazier? It just did. I've got some breaking news to share with you as the media goes all in and trying to shove Kamala Harris across the finish line, even though she doesn't deserve it.